Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true scary stories about the dark nights of Appalachia. Get ready for a journey through 10 chilling encounters that happens on November's cold night. But before we continue, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and don't forget to like and share. Thank you all. Now, let's begin. After my grandfather passed away, I ended up living in his old trailer just outside of Silver Bend, near the edge of Marlow County. The trailer had been sitting empty for almost a year before I moved in. The trailer sat up on a rise that overlooked part of the old logging road. The nearest occupied house was a quarter-mile down the ridge, and I didn't see much of them besides a flicker of porch light at night. By 5 in the evening, the trees were black outlines against the navy sky, and my breath came out in thick clouds when I stepped outside. The first weird thing showed up in the third week I was there. I had this little habit of waking up early and sitting on the front steps with a mug of coffee, but there was something about the morning air out there. Something clean. It helped me start the day without feeling like I was dragging myself through it. That Tuesday, I spotted a boot print. It was at the edge of the clearing, right where the brush started again. Just one, a right boot. Turned slightly inward like whoever made it had a bit of a limp or dragged one leg. The odd thing was how clear it looked, pressed clean into the frost-crusted ground, no debris over it, no scuffing like it had been there long, just sitting there, fresh. At first, I figured it was mine. Maybe I'd walked over that way and forgotten, but I checked my boots, different tread. And besides, I hadn't gone near that edge of the clearing in days. The next morning, I stepped outside with my coffee, and there it was again. Same shape, same angle, but closer this time. Just a few feet, but enough to notice. I pulled out my phone and compared it to a picture I'd taken the day before. Definitely closer. I started to feel off. Still just the one print. No trail leading in or away. No deer prints. No tracks from raccoons or stray dogs. Just that one right boot 5 or 6 feet closer than it had been yesterday. That night, I left the porch light on. Thursday, I didn't sleep. I sat in the armchair by the window, lights off, just watching. Around 2:30, something shifted in the woods. Not a sound. Not even a branch snapping. It was visual, like a darker spot moving behind the trees, a pocket of something denser than the dark around it. It passed between two pines and vanished. I didn't open the door. I just sat there holding my breath. In the morning, I went out with the flashlight and checked the clearing. The boot print was back, dead center now, right in the middle of the open space in front of the steps. What made my stomach knot wasn't how close it was getting. It was what the ground around it looked like. It was smooth, smoothed over, like someone had swept the leaves and gravel clean in a rough circle. Just one step into that cleared patch. No disturbance leading in, no scuff marks or dragged leaves. Just that one print, pressed dead center like whoever made it had appeared right there, stood for a second, and then vanished. I walked back inside and locked the door. I didn't even make coffee that morning. Friday night, I got Grandpa's shotgun down from the wall. I already knew there were no shells in it. He'd stopped keeping it loaded years before. After his stroke, he got nervous about things like that, but I still sat on the couch with it across my lap like it was going to do something. I stayed there until the heater stopped ticking. It happened at exactly 3:07. 1 second it was there, tick, 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 and then it wasn't. Not a fade out. Not a clunk or sputter, just silence. And when it stopped, the whole room felt wrong. Like a sound had been filling the air without me realizing it, and now that it was gone, everything was too still. Then came the knock. Not at the door. Underneath. A single thump against the floorboards. Sharp. Intentional. I froze. Another knock, a few feet over. Something was under the trailer, crawling slowly, tapping the underside as it moved. Not fast, not frantic. Deliberate. I didn't think, I just bolted. I grabbed the flashlight and ran outside barefoot. The cold hit hard. My feet went numb almost immediately, but I forced myself to swing the beam under the trailer. Nothing. No movement. No sounds. Just the empty crawl space and the exposed undercarriage of the heater's intake vent. I walked around the entire trailer, shivering so hard my jaw ached. And then I saw them, two prints this time, a pair, side by side at the bottom of the steps, right and left, both facing the front door. I don't even remember getting back inside, just locking the deadbolt, pulling the couch against the door, and sitting there with the shotgun and a blanket wrapped around me watching the floor. I didn't blink until the sky started to lighten. Saturday morning, I drove into Westfield. I bought a padlock for the door, a trail cam from the feed store, and the biggest box of 12-gauge shells they had in stock. Loaded the shotgun properly, locked up tight, and hung the trail cam facing the clearing. I didn't sleep there again. The next morning, I checked the cam. Nothing, no movement, no animals, no people, just blackness for hours. And then, at 3:07, the heater started ticking again. Not gradually, just tick, like it had never stopped. I moved out before December. Last I heard, the trailer's still there. Nobody rents it. Nobody goes up that ridge much, especially in the colder months. The job wasn't glamorous, just a temp contract handling old land records for the county archive office in a place called Mill and Hollow. That's in the Blue Hills region, couple hours from anything resembling a city. The courthouse sat all by itself on this raised bit of land, like someone had dropped it there just out of reach of everything else. They had me on night shifts that November. I'd come in a little before 5, unlock the side entrance, and head down to the document vault. My job was to scan each page, log them into the system, and refile them. It was methodical, quiet, and weirdly calming once I got into the rhythm. Elevator was busted, so I took the stairs every night, 2 narrow flights down into the basement, where the vault sat behind a locked steel door. That Thursday started like all the others. It was already getting dark when I parked out back. The air had that sharp edge it gets right before the first snow, and my breath fogged the inside of the stairwell window as I made my way down. When I got to the vault, I unlocked it, flipped on the lights, and wheeled out the rolling cart that always waited just inside. Same cart, every time heavy-duty, black rubber wheels, handle squeaky on one side. I didn't check the index card taped to the handle like I usually did. Just figured it was another stack of survey records from the 40s. About 20 minutes in, I noticed something off. The parcel codes weren't right. I was assigned to the Ridley Creek sector tiny plots, mostly farmland and old coal deeds. But these documents were for Knox Parish, which was 2 counties over and not even in our jurisdiction. I figured someone upstairs had mixed boxes again. It had happened before. I finally looked at the card on the cart, and that's when things tilted. The card wasn't normal. It wasn't in the usual shorthand doc type code range, initials of whoever pulled it. This one was written in longhand, full sentences, like something out of a journal. It said, "Lands registered under the November mist, filed after dark, reviewed before first light." The penmanship was neat, careful, the kind of writing that looks like it's trying not to draw attention to how deliberate it is. For a second, I just stared at it. I felt this weird discomfort in my chest, like realizing someone had rearranged your furniture slightly while you slept. Something small, but wrong. I figured I'd just take the whole cart up to the records desk, swap it out, and come back down with the right batch. But when I turned to leave, the door to the vault hallway didn't lead to the hallway anymore. It opened into another room. It looked like part of the archive stone walls, same lighting, similar shelving. But it wasn't a place I'd ever seen before. The vault was a sealed layout. 1 entrance, 1 room, no branches. But here was this entirely new space, seamlessly connected, like it had been waiting behind the wall the whole time. I stepped inside. Not because I'm brave, but because my brain hadn't caught up to how strange it was yet. I just moved forward. Inside, the room stretched longer than the vault itself. It was filled with rows of shelves, same kind of industrial metal we used in the regular archive, but instead of boxes, each shelf had a single object on it. And I mean single, 1 per shelf. A dusty hiking boot, a cracked ceramic cup, a pair of glasses with only 1 lens, a corner of what looked like a ripped photograph. None of it matched. No labels, No categories, just objects. But each one had a little card tucked underneath, yellowed and curling at the edges. The first card I read said, Lena R. Goodwin, November 12th. That stopped me. That was the day I'd started working there. The date wasn't familiar because of the card. It was familiar because I'd written it on my HR form less than 2 weeks ago. I read the next, Carl H. Vinson, November 10th. And the next, J. Reed, November 9th. I backed away instinctively. Not fast. Just one of those automatic movements your body does when your mind starts ringing warning bells. When I turned around, the cart was gone. I hadn't heard it move. I hadn't even heard the wheels squeak. But it was no longer behind me. I spun in a slow circle, trying not to freak out. The doorway I'd come through was now blocked with shelving. Not like something had been moved, like it had always been that way. Like I'd walked through a wall of shelves and forgotten. I spotted the cart 3 rows over, sitting completely still with the top document splayed open, like it was waiting for me to notice it. The ink on the page had bled into the fibers. When I leaned in, I realized it wasn't ink at all. The color was off, darker, thicker, like burnt ash or something else I didn't want to name. I reached for my phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi. Even the screen was blank, battery symbol gone, clock gone, just a dead glow for a second before it blinked out completely. It had been at 90% when I got there. I took hold of the cart handle and started walking toward where the entrance should have been. As I moved, the shelves didn't stay put. They didn't slide or creak, they just seemed to realign, subtly, like I was being rerouted. I didn't run. I don't think I could have. Every muscle in my legs felt like it was being weighed down, not with fear exactly, more like resistance. Like the room didn't want me moving too fast. Eventually, I turned a corner and saw the hallway again. Just like that, it was back. The steel door, the scanner station, even the water cooler by the elevator. It looked so normal, I almost doubted anything had happened. But my hands were shaking, and the cart's wheels squeaked louder than usual as I pushed it out of the vault and locked the door behind me. I stayed the rest of the shift, didn't scan anything. Just sat at the desk, watched the door, and tried to breathe like a person who hadn't just stepped into somewhere that shouldn't exist. When the morning clerk came in, I mentioned the cart might have been labeled wrong. She looked confused. What cart? We don't deliver on Thursdays. I said I must have grabbed the wrong one by accident. She shook her head slowly and said, No, I mean, we don't send anyone down after 4. Building's locked by then. You were the only one in here. I nodded, smiled like it was a simple misunderstanding, and left. That Saturday, I found something wedged between the screen and front door of my trailer. A card. The exact same kind as the vault index. Same ink. Same writing. But this time, it said something new. You saw what you weren't meant to catalog. I didn't go back, didn't even email to quit. Just packed up, crossed the state line, and started over. Got a job at a municipal office in Charlottesville doing record entry. Paperwork again, bland and safe. After that, I kept telling myself it was just some prank. A sleep-deprived hallucination. Maybe I'd inhaled too much dust down there, or maybe someone was screwing with me. My cousin Rhea had asked me to keep an eye on her place while she was out of town for a few weeks. It's this old house her family's owned for ages, tucked up a slope outside a small town called Hartlow. Rhea's son Kevin had handled winterizing duties in past years. Pipes, heaters, generator. But she didn't exactly trust him with her things. She knew I was between contracts and figured I could use a quiet spot for a while. I figured she was right. So I packed a couple bags, drove up from Winslow, and settled into a small room at the Pine Edge Inn down in town. The house was about 20 minutes outside of Hartlow proper. The first week went by without anything unusual. Mostly just chores. The shed door had come loose in a storm, so I hammered that back in place. A few branches had dropped on the fence line, but nothing serious. The generator needed cleaning leaf buildup again. I cleared the intake, topped off the fuel, tested it. All normal stuff. I wasn't planning to sleep there at all. But one day I stayed longer than usual patching up that shed, and before I knew it, the light was gone. Fast. Mountain sunsets sneak up on you. I hadn't brought my truck up the driveway that day, just parked at the turnout and walked in. So I didn't love the idea of hiking back through the trees in the dark. I figured one night wouldn't hurt. Inside, it was cold. Rhea had warned me the insulation wasn't great. I left the kitchen tap dripping just like she'd asked, in case the temps dropped too low, found a couple of thick quilts in the upstairs bedroom, and settled in on the couch. Nothing happened right away, just a restless kind of quiet. Then, around midnight, I heard something. It was a dull thud like someone dropped a box flat against the outside wall. Not heavy, just enough to make me freeze. Then there was this sound like slow shuffling steps across the back porch. You know how wooden planks creak under weight? It was that, but just one step. Then silence. I waited. 10 seconds, maybe 20. Then I flipped on the porch light and opened the door. Nothing. No tracks in the frost. No wind. I walked a few steps out barefoot just to be sure. Still nothing. The trees swayed like normal, but there wasn't a single sign of movement out there. I locked up and went back inside, told myself it was probably an animal, a raccoon or something. But even raccoons don't just take one step and stop. Next morning, I noticed the kitchen tap wasn't dripping anymore. It had been turned off completely, not just slowed. Fully off, the handle twisted snug to the right. I know I didn't do that. I'd made a point to leave it running. Still, I tried to brush it off. Memory plays tricks. But then I went around back to check the generator. Gone. It had been chained to a steel bracket beside the crawlspace entrance. When I looked closer, the chain and the padlock were laid out neatly on the wooden deck, like someone had unhooked them deliberately, coil by coil, and set them down with care. The fuel can was still there. Full. That's when I drove into Hartlow to talk to Kevin. I caught him outside the auto shop where he worked. Asked if he'd been out to the house recently. He looked genuinely confused. Said he hadn't been there in over a month. When I told him about the generator, he offered to come back with me to take a look. I said no. I don't know why. I guess I felt weird about dragging him into something I couldn't even explain yet. I stayed again that night. Thought maybe I'd catch whoever was messing around. Brought a little propane heater, set it up in the living room. Kept the flashlight, my boots right by the door. Slept in a sleeping bag on top of the couch cushions. Kept one eye open most of the night. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up to this wet, rhythmic sound. Not dripping, more like someone tapping on a sponge. It was coming from the hallway. I sat up, waited. The sound kept going. I noticed the light under the bathroom door was on. I hadn't used that bathroom since the day I arrived. I knew for a fact I'd left that light off. I got up, crept over, and opened the door slowly. The sink was full, right to the brim, with water still dribbling from the cold tap. The drain plug was in. I leaned over, pulled the chain, and watched the water spiral down slowly. It gurgled like something was blocking the pipe. I reached in. What I pulled out was a strip of flannel cloth, twisted and soaked, tied tightly around the metal plug chain like someone had bundled it with purpose. Looked like it had been torn from a sleeve. Underneath, the sink basin was scratched. Fine, straight lines, maybe 24 of them, all in parallel rows, like someone had scraped a blade across the porcelain over and over. I didn't touch anything else. Left the light on and closed the door. I sat in the living room until daylight. Next morning, I walked the property, circled wide. Back behind the shed, I found tracks, bare feet. Narrow prints in the frost, toes pressed into the dirt, just enough to show definition. The ground was frozen, but the outlines had started to melt slightly, like the prints were still fresh when the sun came up. I packed my bag and left. Didn't lock the place, just drove down until I hit signal and booked another motel. Told myself I'd go back in a few days with a clearer head. 3 days later, I did go back, with Kevin. The locks had been changed. Front and back doors both. Same style, same brass finish, but the keys Rhea had given me didn't fit anymore. Kevin tried his old set, no luck. We walked around the house, checking windows. Curtains drawn in every room. propane tanks missing. And then I saw it. On the inside of the rear kitchen window, taped up from within, was a sheet of paper. Looked like a printed work order. Black ink, City Utilities letterhead, titled Seasonal Transfer Processing, had my full name on it. Listed me as the approving party for a water service realignment. The date matched the second night I'd stayed there. Only problem? That house isn't on city water. It has a well. Always has. Kevin squinted at the form and muttered something about calling the sheriff. I told him no. Don't ask me why. I just didn't want this going any further. I didn't want to be part of it anymore. That was the last time I saw the house. The week after Thanksgiving, Rhea came back. She called me, furious. Said she'd found a stack of papers on the kitchen table. The top one was marked Final Clearance Notice, Personnel Review. It had my name listed as the reviewing officer. I told her I hadn't set foot in that house since the last time with Kevin. She asked if I'd sent someone else. I told her no. In January, I moved to Cordale, rented a place under a different name. Haven't told anyone the address. My Uncle Lorne had this rundown trailer way up on the ridge behind our house in Tucker County. Lorne had lived up there year-round ever since the quarry let him go. He never talked about it, just sort of disappeared into the ridge one day. Folks in town said it messed with his head a little, being out there by himself. I heard my mom whisper once that he wasn't the same after the accident, though no one ever said what accident. Still, he wasn't mean or wild or anything. He just observed everything like it was going to slip away if he blinked. I always got along with him. He didn't talk much, which suited me fine, and he never made me feel weird about being quiet. He'd let me help stack firewood and actually listened when I talked about books or weird trivia I picked up. Plus, he always had a few sour candies tucked into his coat pocket. Those old kind that make your face scrunch up, even when you expect it. That year, in mid-November, my mom picked up a few overnight shifts at the diner in Parsons. Her boss was down a waitress, and she needed the extra cash. She didn't want me staying alone at the house all night, not with it getting dark by 5 and the back door that never really latched right. Lorne offered to let me stay with him for a few nights. Said I could use the quiet to get my schoolwork done and help him bring in some more firewood before the cold got worse. It sounded fine. I liked it up there, even if the place smelled like smoke and damp blankets. So I packed up some clothes, a flashlight, and a couple of notebooks. My mom made me promise to check in with her at the start of her shift by calling from the payphone at the gas station down the hill. Lorne walked down with me the first time, and after that I went alone. The first night was easy. After we chopped a little kindling and brought in wood from the lean-to, we played a few rounds of rummy at the little fold-out table. He had a jar of peanut butter, some crackers, and a bottle of cheap whiskey he pretended I didn't notice. Around 8, he let me toast some bread over the stove with a wire hanger he'd bent into a fork. It tasted like wood smoke and old metal, but it was warm and better than anything at home. He went to bed early, like always. I stayed up a little longer with one of his paperbacks. It was missing the first few pages in the cover, but I liked the way the words felt quiet around me. The fire popped now and then, but otherwise it was calm. Then, just after midnight, I heard something. It started soft, just the crunch of dry leaves outside the trailer. One step, then another. Slow and deliberate. I held still and listened, heart tapping a little faster. A third step, then nothing. I waited for a knock, or maybe a voice. But nothing came. The silence felt thick, like it had weight to it. Eventually, I told myself it was probably a deer, or maybe a fox nosing around for warmth. The woods were full of life, even in winter. I forced myself to lie down, turned my back to the wall, and pretended the feeling in my chest was just from the cold. The next morning, I didn't say anything. Lorne didn't either, but he kept looking off toward the tree line like something might move if he stared long enough. His coffee sat untouched in his hands, steam curling up in thin little strands that never made it past his chin. Second night, same routine. Dinner by firelight, a few hands of cards, and then bed. This time I didn't even make it to the second chapter before the sound came again. Same steps, same pattern. Crunch, crunch, stomp. I got up and went to the little window by the cot. The glass was cold against my knuckles. I flicked on my flashlight and pointed it out into the trees. The beam didn't reach far. It kind of broke up in the dark like it was getting swallowed by ink. I held my breath, waited, but nothing moved. The leaves didn't even rustle. It felt like holding a conversation where the other person refused to speak. Still, I didn't wake Lorne. I didn't want him to think I was jumpy, but he already knew. The next morning, he didn't say much. Just kept shifting from foot to foot, glancing at the sky like it had secrets he was trying to remember. By the third night, the wind had turned nasty. You could hear it twisting through the trees before it even reached the ridge. Sharp gusts that hit the side of the trailer like it had insulted them. The whole place creaked and shuddered like it was trying to hold itself together. That's when Lorne did something new. He locked the door. I mean, really locked it. Deadbolt and latch. Normally, he just closed it and set a wooden wedge against the bottom, but this time he took the time to slide both locks with slow, deliberate hands. He didn't explain. Just gave me a look and pointed toward the cot like, "We're not discussing this." I lay there in the dark with the blanket pulled up to my ears, waiting for something that already felt inevitable. Around midnight, it came back. First, the footsteps again, slow, careful, almost thoughtful. Then, whistling. It wasn't a song, just 3 flat notes, dull, uneven, whistle, pause, whistle. The rhythm made no sense, like someone pretending they knew how to whistle and not quite pulling it off. The kind of sound that makes you feel like you're being watched through a keyhole. I sat up, heart banging in my chest. Lorne was already awake, sitting in the chair near the door with the rifle laid across his knees. He didn't look scared. He looked old, worn through. He didn't look at me, just said, low and even, "Don't answer it." I didn't ask what he meant. Not then. The wind howled again, and the trailer rocked ever so slightly. Somewhere in the trees, something crunched again. Then the whistling started up, closer, and then tap, tap, tap on the window. Just 3 little taps, not loud, not urgent, like someone checking to see if we were still in there. Lorne stood slowly and raised the rifle toward the door. The tapping came again, then silence. He didn't lower the rifle, just stood there. Finally, he whispered without turning around, "Whatever you do, don't open your eyes if it calls your name." That was the first time I felt my whole body go cold, like something inside had frozen up. I wanted to ask what it was, or how long he'd been hearing it, or why we weren't leaving, but I already knew none of those answers would help. We didn't sleep. At some point, the candle went out and we just sat in the dark, listening to the wind rattle the walls and waiting for something to knock. But nothing else came. Eventually, light started seeping through the seams in the walls, soft and gray. When we stepped outside, the steps were wet. Leaves stuck everywhere like they'd been pressed down by something heavy, but no footprints. Not even ours at first. Just a weird, patchy slickness on the boards like water had pooled there and then vanished. Lorne didn't say anything. He just went back inside, packed up a bag with a few shirts, his books, and the rifle, and said, "We're heading down." He took me home and told my mom he was going to stay with our cousin Mick in Charleston for a while. Never said why. He never went back to the trailer. Not once. Far as I know, it's still up there, leaning harder every winter, rotting in slow motion. All I know is, every year, when the trees go bare and the cold sinks into your lungs like smoke, I shut every window and keep the lights on until sunrise. My friend Eli had this piece of property way up in the hills near the Kentucky-Virginia border, a place called Weller's Gap. His family used to own a bunch of land up there for summer getaways, back when people still called vacations retreats and spent them boiling potatoes over fires and praying together under tarps. By the time we were old enough to go on our own, the place had been sitting quiet for over a decade. One weekend in November, Eli told us he wanted to clean it up. Said maybe he'd fix the place up and rent it out, or just unload it if the land was still worth anything. His grandparents' old shed had collapsed, and the place was covered in junk from the last few people who'd used it. The plan was simple: 3 of us, one weekend, camp out on site, clear what we could, and leave Sunday. He even offered to split whatever cash he got from scrapping the old metal and hauling things out. I grabbed Jordan and Wes, two friends I'd known since high school. We loaded up our gear, sleeping bags, a couple space heaters, and a cooler full of food, and headed out in Eli's pickup. There was no address for the place, just a memory and a dirt path off a barely marked road, about 20 minutes past where the asphalt stopped trying. We arrived Friday evening. The property sat in a hollow surrounded by thin, pale trees that looked like they hadn't fully committed to dying or living. The air was sharper than I expected, dry and still. The only structure still livable was a rusted-out camper tucked between two of the cabins. That's where we slept that first night, crammed in close, heater wheezing and clicking like it had asthma. We passed a bottle between us, played cards by flashlight, and laughed about how easy the job would be. It didn't feel funny the next morning. From the second we stepped outside, there was something about that place that just resisted being looked at too hard. The land felt too quiet, like it had skipped past being forgotten and had started forgetting us back. There were 5 or 6 old cabins, hard to tell which ones were still standing, all with weather-rotted logs and green tin roofs pocked with rust. No curtains in the windows, just empty frames, black as anything. In the middle of the property was a fire pit, long dead, surrounded by rocks that had sunk halfway into the earth. A flagpole stood nearby, rope swinging loose, no flag in sight. A little further up the slope, past a patch of frost-slick grass, was what Eli called the chapel. Small, whitewashed, and half-collapsing. A wooden cross bolted above the doorway, one of the windows broken, another boarded shut. There was no doorbell, no sign. Just a wide, flat silence that made it clear nobody had walked up those steps in years. We got to work clearing the shed first. Most of the roof had caved in, and pieces of rusted metal stuck out like jagged teeth. Underneath the wreckage were crates, broken tools, and old bottles full of cloudy liquid I didn't dare open. We worked through the morning, taking breaks by the truck and tossing garbage into one pile, salvageable metal into another. Around midday, Wes ducked into one of the standing cabins and came back out holding a can of peaches with the label half peeled off. The expiration date was 1989. Bet it still tastes better than that gas station chili, he joked, and we all laughed, even though it wasn't funny. Jordan found a Bible in another cabin. I remember him flipping through it and saying, "There's only like 6 pages in here." The rest had been torn out clean. No scribbles, no bookmarks, just gone. When I looked closer, I saw the first few pages still had a name scribbled on the inside cover. Ellen L. Rake, 1952. The way it was written tight, clean cursive, it didn't look like something a kid would have done. Eventually, we worked our way up to the chapel. Inside, it was empty except for a big metal barrel and 3 folding chairs lined up along the far wall. A quilt lay draped over the barrel, moldy and stiff like it had frozen mid-slide. It smelled faintly of mildew and something else, something chemical and sour like wet rope or bad vinegar. There was dust across the floor, thick in places, but it wasn't undisturbed. We spotted a single set of boot prints starting near the back corner of the room. They led forward, clear and deep, and just stopped about 5 feet from the wall. Not at a doorway, not at a loose board. Just stopped. We thought maybe Eli had been poking around earlier, but he swore he hadn't even stepped inside. Jordan went quiet after that. Wes made a joke about cult sacrifices. No one laughed this time. As the sun started dropping, the cold crept back in like it had been waiting for its cue. We threw everything we weren't using back in the truck and wrapped up in blankets, huddled in the bed while the trees darkened around us. It was one of those silences where you start hearing things that aren't there. Dry leaves settling, wind brushing against bark, little clicks in the woods that sounded almost like footsteps but never quite close enough to be sure. Around 6, we heard a noise from the chapel. A single thud. Not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the cold, like someone had dropped something flat and heavy. We stared at each other. Jordan stood up, cupped his hands, and yelled Eli's name. No answer. Then another thud. Slower, heavier, almost thoughtful. None of us moved for a while. I finally grabbed a flashlight and the tire iron we'd used earlier. Wes followed, saying, "Let's just check. It's probably a raccoon." I pushed the chapel door open. Inside, everything was gone. The chairs, the quilt. The air smelled cleaner somehow, like the dust had been stirred up and swept out. The barrel was still there, but everything else had vanished. We hadn't heard footsteps. We hadn't seen anyone enter or leave. We'd been sitting 30 feet away. I stepped around the barrel and felt my throat close up. The footprints were back, but not just one set now. 3 sets, side by side. Same boot tread, same deep print, all fresh. They led from the corner again, out toward the center of the room, and then stopped, just like before. No prints leading out. I turned to call Jordan over, but before I got a word out, the door slammed behind us, hard. We jumped. Wes lunged for the handle, but it wouldn't budge at first. I helped him push, my hands sweaty around the tire iron. The second shove, it shifted. The third flew open like something had let go. We spilled out onto the grass, and the chairs were back, all 3, lined up again, right where they'd been that morning. Same angle, same spacing. We didn't talk, we just ran. Jordan dove into the truck bed without a word. Wes climbed in behind him. I got in, turned the key, nothing. Tried again. The engine groaned like it didn't want to wake up. Third try, it caught. I slammed the gas and we peeled down the dirt track, headlights bouncing off tree trunks like they were shifting as we passed. 2 miles out, we saw another pair of headlights. Eli's car. We flagged him down, waved our arms, told him everything in a rush of panicked fragments. He didn't get it, but he could see enough in our faces to know something had happened. He agreed to follow us back up. When we returned to the clearing, it was quiet, too quiet. The chapel door stood open. The chairs were inside again, but now the quilt was folded neatly on top of them, like someone had taken the time to smooth out the edges. There were no footprints, no thuds, no sign anything had moved. We packed everything right then. Left nothing behind. Hit the road around midnight and didn't stop until we saw real streetlights again. Later, over coffee at a Waffle House in Fairmont, Eli told us something his grandfather had mentioned once, that the land had belonged to a small religious group in the 40s, called themselves the Recovered, ran weekend retreats, said they believed in cleansing the devout. They shut down in the 50s, or at least, that's what the county record said. I never saw Jordan after that weekend. He moved to Oregon a few months later, deleted his social accounts, never responded to messages. Wes and I kept in touch for a while, but he never wanted to talk about what happened, not even when I brought it up gently. I was 37 when I got the contract. Basically, I was the guy who made sure the generators didn't run out of fuel and that they kept transmitting weather data. Nothing complicated. November was always busy. You'd get early frost, heavy rains, the occasional tree down across the fire roads. That was fine by me. It kept people away. I liked being out there alone, with just the sound of my boots and the generator hum. No one calling, no one watching. But there was this one station, S31. No name, just that number in the database. On paper, it was identical to the rest. A squat concrete shed, backup solar panels, diesel tank, couple of vent stacks. But the route to get there was a whole different animal. You had to snake up this rough trail that barely counted as a road, winding above an old mine site near a place called Driskin Hollow. Folks in the nearby town of Red Thorn didn't talk about that place much. Anytime I mentioned S31, they'd just change the subject. In the dispatch system, the station was flagged unpreferred terrain. Most techs skipped it when they could. I didn't mind. I'd done it once before. Remembered the grade near the summit, how the trees leaned in so tight it felt like they were pressing down on you. The air always felt a little too cold up there, even compared to the other sites. I parked the truck right where the road got too rough, same spot as last time. The last stretch had to be done on foot. I clicked on my flashlight and started up. There was some fog, thin, low, just enough to blur the shapes of the trees. I passed this old birch with a crooked metal sign nailed into it. The letters rusted to the point that only Nessie, Ness, Nas, EO was still readable. The generator was already running when I got there, which wasn't right. They're programmed to cycle on automatically every 24 hours, and I had the log showing S31 had kicked on 4 hours ago, so it shouldn't have been running again. I opened the housing. That's when I noticed the duct tape on the fuel line. Not the usual industrial stuff we carried in the service kits. This was that cheap, thick gray kind you buy in multi-packs. It was clean, fresh. Someone had been here. I radioed dispatch, asked if another tech had stopped by. They double-checked and said no. The last one to check S31 was me, 2 weeks ago. I started going through the checklist anyway, trying not to overthink it. The fuel level was lower than it should have been. The intake filter had been swapped, but not for a new one, for an older one. Used, but not logged. When I opened the inside maintenance panel, I saw notes written in red ink. My handwriting. Except, not mine. Same pen, same shorthand, even the same little quirks I had when I wrote. But I'd never written those phrases. Stuff like confirmed visual data match and verified dimensional seals. That wasn't how we logged field notes. I usually just wrote replace cap or cleaned exhaust. I took a picture. It made the back of my neck prickle. Then I opened the data relay panel. Normally, the LED indicator flashes green in a slow, even rhythm, but this one blinked 3 times. Pause. 4 times. Pause. Then 5. Then nothing. It didn't loop. I stepped away, circled the station, found footprints behind the vents. They weren't mine. The spacing was wrong. Too close together. And they were deep. Whoever left them was heavier than me, or maybe carrying something. I followed them a little way downhill, 10, maybe 15 yards, and then they just stopped. No turn, no scuff, no disturbance. Just frost, clean and undisturbed past that point. I didn't like it. Didn't feel like wind or snow had erased them. It felt like they had never continued. I stood there for a long time, listening. Not even sure for what. But the silence felt wrong. Total stillness. No wind, no birds, no creaking trees. I finished the checklist, left a note in the panel, verify service history, possible error in fuel record. It wasn't regulation, but I didn't want to write what I'd really seen. Didn't know how to. That night, back at home, I pulled up the photo I'd taken of the maintenance notes. Something was off. The angle. The light in the photo came from the right side, but when I was standing there, the sun had been behind me, definitely behind me. I checked the timestamp. Said the photo was taken 2 days ago. The next morning, I found a package on my front step. No postage, no label, just a box with a clipboard inside. Same brand as the one I always used. Same little dent on the corner from when I dropped it on a rock last summer. Same water stain across the back from a spilled coffee thermos. Identical, but my clipboard was already sitting on my desk. I compared them. The new one had the same entry I'd written at the station. My notes, same handwriting, same pressure, same odd phrasing, but the time listed was exactly 1 hour later than when I remembered writing it. I called my supervisor, told him about the clipboard, the duplicate entry, the duct tape, all of it. He told me to bring it in and file an irregular incident report. Said they'd take a look. So I drove to the depot the next morning. But when I opened the truck, the clipboard was gone. In its place was a different one, blank, except for one note at the top written in red ink, confirmed match, observer active. That night, my home generator kicked on at exactly 3:04 a.m. We hadn't lost power. I went outside. There was a new strip of duct tape on the fuel line. Fresh, clean. And my initials, in red ink, were written on the metal housing. I don't live in the mountains anymore. I moved east, out near the coast. I don't take jobs that involve remote access or isolated equipment. I was 27 when it happened. The power had already gone out twice that week, so by then I'd gotten used to doing everything by flashlight. I ran a little equipment shed for the Forestry Service, way out near a place called Laurel Gap in eastern Kentucky. Most evenings, it was just me. I kept track of inventory, checked logs, locked up the tools. Sometimes I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I didn't really mind the quiet. I kind of liked being the last one there. Gave me space to breathe, to think, without anyone needing anything from me. That Thursday, I wrapped up the paperwork early and decided to stick around for a bit. There was this rusted-out '89 Ford sitting behind the shed I'd been tinkering with for a few weeks, half hobby, half excuse, to avoid heading back down the ridge in the dark. I wanted to see if I could get the carburetor off before the snow came in. It wasn't urgent, just something to keep my hands busy. I had the bay doors propped open, flashlight clipped to the hood, working my way through bolts with my fingers stiff from the cold. It was quiet. Just the usual stuff, tools clinking, a couple of distant pops when the trees cracked from the temperature drop. Normal things I'd heard 100 times before and never paid much attention to. Then, a little after 9, I heard tires crunching into the gravel lot, which was weird. No one else was supposed to be up there that late. The guys on my team usually cleared out around 5:30, 6 at the latest. We didn't have late shifts, and we definitely didn't have visitors. The only road up to the lot is a narrow gravel lane with no shoulder and no reason to take, unless you're coming to our shed. I switched off the flashlight and stood still, listening. The truck rolled in slowly, like the driver was unsure about where to stop. I heard the engine idling for way too long, longer than felt normal. Then it cut off. No doors opened, no voices, no movement. I waited a full 2 minutes before stepping out of the shed. It wasn't one of ours. Forestry service trucks are all marked and usually covered in mud. This one was a lifted Chevy newer, shiny like it had been kept clean on purpose. It had dark windows and a tarp tied down over the bed. The plates were blacked out. Not removed, just blacked out like someone had covered them on purpose. I called out, just a regular, "Hey, everything okay? Nothing aggressive, nothing weird?" Just trying to sound normal, friendly. No response. The engine had just cut off, and I could still hear the ticking of the block cooling down. That steady, soft pinging noise engines make when they've been running a while and then stop. I didn't go any closer. After another minute or so, the driver's side window rolled down about 2 inches. Not all the way, just enough to let sound out, and I heard breathing. Not panting or struggling, just slow, steady breathing. It was too steady, actually, like someone was trying to be obvious about it. No one moved. No one spoke. I called out again, louder this time. "You need help?" The breathing cut off, and then the window rolled back up. I didn't wait for anything else. I turned around and went back inside the office. Grabbed the landline in the back room. We kept it in case of emergency since there's no cell service up there. Picked it up, put it to my ear. No dial tone, just static. Loud, close. Not the soft hiss you get when a line's dead. This felt like wind pushing directly through the receiver, like it was too close. Hung up. Tried again. Same thing. When I stepped outside again, the truck was gone. Not just gone, like no trace at all. No sound of the engine leaving, no glow of taillights. Nothing. The lot was just empty, like it had been all night. But the part that really made my stomach twist? The gravel where it had been parked looked untouched. No tire ruts, no disturbed stones. It was as if the thing had never been there at all. I stayed in the office that night, rolled out the spare cot we kept in the closet and threw my jacket over myself. I wasn't scared exactly, but something felt wrong. Like the place wasn't quite mine anymore. Or maybe like I wasn't alone, even though I was. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up. It was dead silent, but I had that wired feeling in my chest, like when your body knows something before your brain catches up. Then I heard it, this steady scraping sound coming from the back door. Not a knock, not banging, just a long, slow scrape. Like metal dragging across wood, over and over. I sat up on the cot and just listened for a second. It didn't stop. I got up, grabbed the flashlight, and cracked the door. Nothing was there. But when I looked down, the bottom of the door frame had deep gouges cut into the wood, perfectly spaced. Clean lines, like someone had taken a rake or some kind of tool and dragged it over the threshold again and again. Not random, not messy, like they were trying to mark something. In the morning, I checked the motion-triggered cameras. We had 1 on the drive, 1 on the shed, and 1 pointed toward the equipment yard. The one facing the drive had stopped recording at exactly 8:56 p.m. The last image it captured? Just the empty lot. The other 2 were fine. They didn't catch anything out of the ordinary. No truck, no movement, nothing. I reported it to my supervisor, typed everything up, sent him the footage, mentioned the door scratches, even told him about the phone line. His reply: probably just a prank, locals messing around, which, to be fair, happens sometimes. But it never felt like that. This wasn't some bored teenager with a BB gun or someone trying to steal copper wire. It was too careful. About a week later, I walked out to my truck and found both front doors wide open. Now, I'm 100% sure I locked them. I don't leave them open up there, not with how fast the cold rolls in. Nothing was missing, but the passenger seat was pushed all the way forward, and the back seat belt was buckled. That's the part that still gets me. I don't use the back seat. There's never anyone else with me. There's no reason for that belt to be fastened. Later that same night, the phone rang. The landline, not my cell. I picked up and just heard breathing. Same as before. Heavy, deliberate, not rushed. Then static. Then a faint sound, way off in the background. An engine idling, I think. Or something that sounded a lot like it. I stayed on the line for maybe 10 seconds. Then came a whisper. Slow, quiet. I couldn't make out the words, but it was speech. Not random noise. Not wind. I stopped answering after that. After the 4th call, I unplugged the phone entirely and left town for a few days. Crashed with my buddy Reed in Pikeville. I didn't explain much, just said I needed a break. While I was gone, my supervisor texted me a photo. The shed had been broken into. Nothing was missing, but all the tools had been laid out neatly across the floor, arranged in a big rectangular shape. My old Ford's hood was propped open, and the screwdriver I'd been using, it was jammed into the carburetor. Not stuck, jammed. Forced in sideways like someone had wanted to ruin it. He asked if I'd come back and done it. I didn't even reply. I quit 2 days later, sent in the paperwork, packed up what little I had, and moved across the state line. Found a different forestry district, closer to town, closer to people. That was 4 years ago. I haven't seen the truck since. I won't go near that place. I'd taken up living in this beat-up old trailer sitting on a slope outside Fairgrove, a sleepy town tucked into the western hills of North Carolina. Clay, my dad's cousin, owned the property and said I could stay there cheap if I kept the place standing. Basically, keep the gutters clear, patch what needed patching, and haul firewood for the stove. I was between things. College wasn't working out. My hometown felt like a cage, so the deal sounded perfect. It felt like freedom. Just me, a wood stove that roared like a dragon when it got going, and a pile of half-read books from the thrift store. The cell signal was terrible, but that honestly helped. Nobody could bug me unless I drove back into town. I liked it that way. November hit fast. 1 week it was chilly, the next it was full-on bone cold. The kind that makes the air taste like metal. And the dark, man. The dark came early. By 5, the woods were already shadows. By 6, it felt like midnight. I'd finish chopping wood, heat up a can of soup or some questionable instant noodles, and spend the evenings under a thick blanket, reading by lamplight. I didn't mind the silence. It felt earned. At first, anyway. The first weird thing happened sometime in the 2nd week of the month. I was outside stacking wood behind the trailer, wearing gloves and trying to beat the cold before it got meaner. That's when I heard footsteps. Clear, steady crunches on the gravel path that led up from the trees. It was late enough that I didn't expect company, but this wasn't an animal. These were human steps. Crunch, 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 measured. I called out something like, "Hey there," just in case it was a neighbor or a hunter wandering too far. No answer. I waited a few seconds, then walked around the side of the trailer with my flashlight, sweeping it across the tree line. Nothing, just woods and stillness. The next morning, when I stepped out to grab more firewood, I noticed boot prints in the frost-deep ones, pressed clean into the dirt and ice right near the front steps. Not mine. I was wearing ratty old sneakers at the time. These were heavy, patterned treads, deep enough to say whoever it was had stood there a while, staring at the door maybe. I tried to be reasonable about it. Maybe someone from town had wandered up, a hunter, a local just cutting through. Still, I started locking the door earlier after that. Didn't hurt to be safe. 2 nights later, I woke up at what must have been close to 3 a.m. I didn't check the time, but the fire was down to embers, and the air had that dry chill that slips under blankets. I sat up because I'd heard something. A sharp sound. Metal. Clink. Not loud, just precise. Enough to cut through the silence like a needle. I waited. Then came another one. Clink. I held still. Listened. Nothing else followed. No footsteps. No wind. Eventually, I got up, grabbed the flashlight again, and checked outside. Porch was empty. But my kindling bucket was tipped over, and one of the axe heads I kept under the bench, just a spare, old and rusted, was gone. That's when I decided the curtains should stay closed at night. Things escalated slowly, which somehow made it worse. A few days later, I noticed my coffee mug was upside down in the sink. I definitely hadn't left it that way. Another morning, I saw the latch on the screen door had been bent like someone had tried to pry it open from the outside. Then there was the pile of pebbles. Small, rounded stones placed in a little mound beneath the back window. No pattern, no obvious meaning, just there. Where there hadn't been anything the day before. After that one, I nailed all the windows shut. I tried calling the local sheriff's station. Deputy Cates came by, eventually. Big guy with a gray mustache and a voice like a gravel truck. He walked around the property, shined a flashlight under the trailer, asked if I had enemies. Nope, I said. He scratched his head and said it was probably local kids messing around, or someone from up the ridge looking for trouble. Told me to call again if it got worse. It got worse. The first time I heard the voice, I thought it was a radio left on or something. But no, I just turned off the lantern and climbed into bed. The fire was still glowing faintly, painting the room with that red shimmer. I was almost asleep when I heard it. A man's voice, outside. Low, not talking to me, just murmuring. Like he was pacing or thinking out loud. Calm, repetitive. I froze. It took me a minute to catch what he was saying. At first, it was just noise. Then the words settled into place. He sleeps with fire, fire sleeps with him. Over and over, the exact same tone each time. Like a mantra, like a rule. He sleeps with fire, fire sleeps with him. I stayed still, didn't breathe. After a while, the voice stopped. I didn't move until the sun came up. The next day, I drove into town and bought a heavy-duty lock for the bedroom door. Grabbed a trail camera too and pointed it toward the backwoods. Checked the footage every day after that. Nothing. Just trees swaying and a few raccoons looking confused. That weekend, I cracked. Drove 2 hours to stay with my dad. Didn't give him a reason. Just said I needed a change of scene. I stayed the night, drove back Monday morning. When I opened the door to the trailer, something felt off. My boots, always left by the door, were filled to the brim with dirt. Not dumped in, packed, smooth on top. Like someone had taken the time to press it down with their hands, slowly and carefully. That got to me in a way the other stuff hadn't. It felt intimate, like a message. A warning maybe, or a joke I wasn't in on. I dumped them out and lit a bundle of sage my cousin had left in a care package months ago. I didn't believe in that kind of thing, but it felt better than doing nothing. I also scribbled a note. I know you're coming here, stop, and taped it to the front window. That night, I lay on the floor with a crowbar and the lights off, waited. At some point after midnight, I must have dozed off, but I woke up when I heard it. A knock. 3 soft, even taps on the window beside the couch. No other sound. I stayed still. Then 3 more knocks. slower this time. Then I heard the tape peeling, a soft, careful sound as the note was pulled off. Morning came like a relief. I opened the front door and found the note sitting under a rock on the porch. The message I'd written had been crossed out in pencil. Underneath, in small, even letters, "The fire can't protect you." I packed a bag and left within the hour. Drove to Asheville and stayed with my cousin Kayla for a week. Didn't tell her everything, just that someone had been messing around near the trailer. She didn't ask questions, just made up the guest room. I went back at the end of November, figuring I'd grab a few things and maybe close the place up before winter. It was snowing lightly. Everything was still. I walked in and immediately smelled lamp oil. Thick, sharp, chemical. I followed the scent to the bedroom. Every candle I owned, dozens, had been melted down and poured into a perfect circle around the bed. My mattress had been soaked with oil, not splashed, saturated, like someone had spent hours doing it. And right in the center of the bed, placed like some kind of offering, was the missing axe head. It was polished. There were no footprints in the snow outside. I didn't turn off the light. Didn't take anything. I just left. Drove straight back to Asheville, and I never set foot on that property again. There was this guy I knew, Jared. He was a friend of my cousin's, kind of a quiet guy, but solid. Owned a couple of old hunting cabins, way out in the hills past Alder Hollow. He said, "You won't hear a single voice up there unless it's your own." Sounded perfect at the time. The cabin was as basic as it gets. The mattress was so warped, I had to flip it and shove some folded clothes under one side just to sleep at an angle that didn't mess with my back. There was a hand pump well about 50 yards down a slope, and a wood pile tucked under a lean-to out back. I went in expecting rough conditions, and I got them. But that was the point. I wanted stillness. I wanted to be uncomfortable in a way that didn't come from email notifications and pointless meetings and pretending I was okay when I wasn't. It was late November. The kind of cold that doesn't mess around. You'd wake up with your nose frozen, even with the stove going. The trees were mostly stripped down to their skeletons by then, except the pines. You'd hear them whisper sometimes when the wind picked up, which was oddly comforting, like someone breathing deep just out of sight. The first few nights were fine. Better than fine, honestly. I'd chop wood during the day, boil water for oatmeal, and read paperbacks until the flashlight dimmed. I had a little wind-up radio but stopped using it after day 2. Silence felt better. Each morning I'd take a slow lap around the cabin, just to stretch my legs and check for prints. Just out of habit, I guess. I'd see deer trails cutting through the brush, the occasional little paw prints of a raccoon, and once, something that looked canine coyote probably, normal mountain stuff. But then, around the 4th morning, something strange happened. I stepped out and saw a coffee cup sitting on the porch railing. Just sitting there, like it belonged, pale blue enamel chipped along the lip. The kind of mug you'd find in a garage next to a dusty thermos and a box of bent nails. I hadn't brought any mugs. I only had a metal water bottle and a single mess tin for boiling. That was it. No extra dishes, nothing that matched this cup. I stood there for a full minute just staring at it. Not scared, not even concerned. Just trying to make the timeline make sense. Maybe Jared had swung by and dropped it off without knocking, but why? He wasn't the type for unannounced visits, and if he had shown up, I definitely would have heard his truck. There was only one way in, and it wasn't exactly subtle. I figured maybe I'd overlooked it somehow. Maybe it had been here all along, tucked away, and I'd just noticed now. I took the cup inside so it wouldn't blow off and set it on the table. Next morning, it was back outside on the railing. Same exact spot, perfectly centered like someone had measured it. Now, that got under my skin a little. I looked around, no tire marks, no footprints in the frost, no broken branches or scuffed leaves. Just that cup, sitting like it had always been there. I brought it back inside. This time, I left it in the wood stove. No fire, just cold iron and ash. I surrounded it with kindling and stacked 3 logs over top like a barrier. The next morning, the logs were untouched, but the cup, back on the railing again. I didn't even pick it up this time, just stood in the doorway with my hands in my coat pockets, watching it. My stomach felt tight, not panic, more like a subtle pressure, like being watched during a test when you haven't studied. I finally called Jared, asked if he'd been messing with me. He sounded confused, swore he hadn't been up there in days and had never seen a blue enamel cup in his life. He said, "Why, man? What's going on?" I didn't know how to answer him. Not in a way that didn't sound ridiculous. I just told him not to worry about it, that I was probably just overtired. That night, I did something a little more extreme. I wrapped the cup in an old towel, hiked it a good mile down the trail, and buried it. Picked a dead pine stump, dug down past the frost line, and packed the dirt hard after dropping the cup in. Even marked the spot with a rock so I wouldn't forget. No cup the next morning, or the next. I started to relax. Started to think maybe I'd handled it. Then came the seventh night. Around mid-afternoon, I'd hiked down to a dry creek bed for better kindling. On the way back, I saw light in the cabin window, soft, golden, steady, like a lantern, except I didn't own a lantern. I stopped short, stood behind some brush about 30 feet back, heart picking up. There was no movement inside, no shadow, no flicker. Then, slowly, the light dimmed, like someone had turned a dial down to nothing. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. When I finally got the courage to go in, everything looked exactly the same. No sign of entry, no footprints, no soot in the stove, but the cup, dead center on the floor. I picked it up slowly, like it might jump, and set it on the table without saying a word. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat by the stove, feeding wood into the fire and listening to the crackle, waiting for something else to shift. The next day, I drove into Ledlow, parked behind the gas station, and slept in the truck. Thought about going back home, but that felt like quitting, like giving the cup, whatever it was, some kind of victory. So I went to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Doran was polite, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. I asked if there was any history with the cabins, break-ins, squatters, anything unusual. He just said, "You wouldn't believe how many people hear things in the woods come November. Cold gets in your head." Didn't exactly inspire confidence. I went back anyway, sat on the porch until sundown. No cup that day, or the next. I started sleeping better, even stopped checking the railing each morning. Then, the 12th night, I woke up freezing. The fire had died down to embers. I reached out in the dark for the matches, but they weren't where I left them. They were across the stove, tucked near the back corner like someone had slid them out of reach. I sat up, and that's when I noticed the front door. It wasn't open, it wasn't broken. It just wasn't there. Gone, like it had never existed. Hinges still attached to the frame, but no wood, just the open outline and the woods beyond. And standing in that open space, something, not a person, not really. It had height, but it was off, wrong proportions. Too narrow at the shoulders, limbs too long, still as stone. Its shape didn't shift or breathe. It just existed there, watching, or facing me. I can't say for sure it had eyes. It never moved, didn't lean in or twitch or anything. It was like it had been placed there. I didn't move, not a muscle. My breath slowed to shallow puffs. My hands curled under the blanket on instinct. Every nerve in my body told me not to run. Just wait. Eventually, it stepped back. Not walked, stepped. One precise movement. Lifted, placed, gone. No rustling, no sound. I waited until the sun rose before moving. I packed what I could fit in my bag, stepped over where the door should have been, and walked down the ridge. Didn't stop until I hit gravel. Called Jared from the diner. Told him I was done. He just said, "Leave the keys in the truck. Don't worry about it. Now I live in Ohio. Quiet neighborhood, second floor apartment, 2 locks on the door." Last fall, I ended up spending a few long days out near Harlan Grove, Kentucky, because of something my Uncle Dale left behind when he passed. He died that summer. Nothing mysterious about it, just heart failure, I think. But nobody in the family wanted to deal with his old trailer, which had been sinking into the side of a ridge road for years. The thing was practically welded to the land by rust and time. He hadn't kept it up. Hell, he hadn't even paid the property taxes in years. So in November, I took a few days off work and drove out to clean it up before the county decided to padlock it or auction it off. It wasn't about honoring him or anything like that. I was just hoping there might be tools or parts or something salvageable. Maybe something I could sell. Or maybe I just wanted to feel like I'd done the responsible thing. Either way, it didn't feel optional. I hadn't been out there in at least 5 years, and when I pulled up, I actually sat in the truck a minute staring at it. The place looked like it had been shrugging into the earth. The front steps sagged like they'd rot through if I put too much weight on them, and the door hung a little crooked. The porch light fixture was empty, and the skirting around the trailer had mostly ripped off or blown away. From the truck, I could already see the dark gap underneath, like a long mouth waiting to swallow something. It had gotten cold fast that year, that biting, hollow kind of cold that hits harder in the mountains. I kept the engine running and chipped away at the lock for a solid 10 minutes before I finally got the door open. The smell hit immediately. Damp paper, rust, mildew, like the inside of an abandoned storage unit. I pulled my coat tighter and stepped in. The floor creaked in protest, but held. Most of what Dale left behind was just layers of hoarding. Yellowed newspapers in leaning stacks, broken furniture, shelves full of warped cassette tapes, clothes that had grown some kind of fuzz. There wasn't much order to it either. Just the kind of slow, sprawling mess that builds when someone stops expecting company. I spent most of that first day just dragging out bags of trash. 4, maybe 5 full bags before I even reached the back hallway. Nothing felt worth saving. And I don't know if it was the cold or the silence or just the weight of the place, but after a few hours, I started feeling like I wasn't alone. Not in a supernatural way, just aware of how much time had passed in that trailer, how much of him was still clinging to the walls. Dale had always been a little strange. I didn't notice it when I was a kid, but looking back, he had that edge to him. Not paranoid exactly, just guarded. In the last few years, he'd gotten real quiet about things. Said people were watching him. He didn't mean cops or family. He meant folks from up the ridge. When I asked who, he'd just shake his head like I'd already missed something obvious. He always mentioned it more in November. I used to think it was the bottle talking, or maybe just the loneliness catching up with him. The third night, I was working in the back room, what might have been his bedroom at one point, though by then it was just boxes and dust. It was full dark outside, and I remember thinking I should probably stop soon. I just leaned over a crate of old VHS tapes when I heard it. A knock. Not on the door, on the side paneling, low to the ground, somewhere near the kitchen. I stopped moving, just froze with my hands still resting on the box. For a second, I wondered if maybe it was the trailer settling. Then it came again. Not loud, just 2 sharp taps like someone knocking politely from the outside. I stood there for a while, listening. Eventually, I walked to the front and opened the door. The cold hit me right in the face, but nothing was out there. No movement. Just the same frost-covered trees and that soft crackle of dead leaves. I stepped down off the porch and took a look around, but there was nothing. No tracks. No signs of anything passing through. I told myself it was a branch or maybe some critter looking for warmth. But as I was walking back to the truck, my flashlight caught something in the dirt just off the steps. Footprints, bare feet, no shoes. Long and narrow with visible toes, like someone had walked through with wet skin and left perfect impressions in the frost. They came from the slope near the woods and ended right below the kitchen window, the same one I'd been standing near when I heard the knock. I didn't go back inside. I climbed into the truck, locked the doors, and kept the engine running while I stared at the trailer. I stayed like that until the sun came up. The next day, I almost left. Almost. But I told myself I was being ridiculous. That whatever I saw was just some old hiker or maybe a teenager screwing around. I'd come all this way, and I didn't want to leave the job half done. So I went back in. The final night, I was sitting at the little fold-out table in the kitchen, sorting through a drawer full of junk. The furnace had quit earlier that afternoon, and my breath was fogging in the air. My fingers were too numb to pick through the paper properly. All I'd found were expired coupons, rusted measuring spoons, and a few crumpled photos of people I didn't recognize. That's when I heard it. Not knocking this time. Laughter. Quiet, but close, just outside, somewhere near the back wall. At first, I thought maybe it was an animal. Then it rose slightly and broke off in a way that made my scalp prickle. It wasn't right. It had this uneven rhythm, like someone trying to fake a laugh, practicing it in the dark. Then it started again. Short, high-pitched bursts. No joy in it, just noise. I didn't move. My body had gone stiff, like if I stayed perfectly still, it wouldn't notice me. The laughing stopped after maybe 10 seconds, but I didn't get up. I waited. I remember counting to 60 twice. Then I stood and walked slowly to the window. Out past the trailer, just where the woods began, I saw something standing. At first, I thought it was a tree. Then it shifted. It was tall, thin, 2 legs, standing upright, but wrong in the way it held itself. Stretched too long, bent in the wrong places. And the head, God, the way its head was tilted back, like it didn't know how to wear it properly. It moved forward, just 2 steps, then stopped again, listening. I shut off the lights and didn't move for an hour. My hands hurt from gripping the table edge too hard. I slept in the truck that night again, or tried to. I don't think I ever actually drifted off. Every creak, every gust, every distant sound pulled my eyes open. At dawn, I got out and walked the slope behind the trailer. The air had that brittle, too quiet stillness, like even the birds didn't want to be there. I found more prints, same bare feet. Clear and recent, even on the frozen ground. They circled the trailer. Once, twice. At one point, they overlapped with the boot prints I'd left the day before. Another set stopped just a few feet from the truck, pointed directly at the driver's door. That was it. I drove off without locking the door behind me. Called the county the next day and told them they could have the whole thing. Land, trailer, everything. I didn't want a dime for it.